Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me here today. My name is Jeff Hunter, and I am the field CTO here at NinjaOne. And today we're talking about how we can use NinjaOne to remediate vulnerabilities. I wanted to be very clear about what this means. It doesn't mean that NinjaOne is detecting vulnerabilities per se. Uh, it's not a specific product, but most vulnerabilities are remediated by one of two things. It's usually either some sort of patch, and so that could be a software patch or an operating system patch, or it could be some sort of script or executable that you need to deploy. Think of a registry modification to prevent code execution in Office, an example we'll talk about in a little bit. One way or the other, whether you're patching or whether you're pushing something that is more script-based or registry-based, regardless of how you're doing that, there's a good chance that you're doing that with your endpoint management platform. And so, in recognition of that, NinjaOne has recently launched a couple different features that make it a lot easier to correlate vulnerabilities inside of the product with the devices where you would then want to take action and remediate those vulnerabilities. And so we're going to go through a little bit of a PowerPoint here. I promise it will be as brief as I can make it, and then we'll spend most of the session inside of an actual demonstration of what NinjaOne's vulnerability capabilities are, and how it looks and feels to actually start taking action when you have some sort of exploit that needs remediation. We're going to talk a little bit about what problems exist with managing vulnerabilities today. There are a few. The biggest one is that your identification of vulnerabilities and your remediation of vulnerabilities are generally two separate platforms, two separate tools, sometimes even two separate teams. And so that is, of course, a big problem that we'll talk about. We'll talk about why tracking vulnerabilities is important. It's one of those things that can seem exhausting because there are simply so many of these vulnerabilities these days that need to be tracked. Uh, but it is, of course, critical to maintaining a strong security posture, even if 80%, 90% of vulnerabilities are something that don't really necessarily impact you. It's important to track this because it's ultimately going to be the other 10% or 20% of the vulnerabilities that do impact you that are going to end up causing problems. And then we're going to get into the demonstration portion and talk about what role does NinjaOne actually play in remediating these vulnerabilities. And that comes down to patching the operating system, patching third-party applications, but then also those script-based remediations I mentioned, like modifying a registry key. Uh, We'll also talk about how NinjaOne does do some native identification of when you do have exploits based off of the patches that are missing on a device. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself. First, let's talk about what problems exist with managing vulnerabilities today. The number one issue that we generally find when people come to NinjaOne and they describe what their workflows are is that the vulnerability remediation team could generally be the IT team or the operations team. And then the team that actually does the detection of the vulnerabilities tends to be the security team. And so those tend to be separate departments that don't always have access to the same tools and that don't always necessarily communicate very well across departments. And so that ends up with inefficient remediation. You're not remediating these vulnerabilities as quickly as possible, which is key. We'll talk about this in a minute here. But remediating these quickly is key, especially as disclosure times have dropped. That means that your time frame here, your grace period, has never been shorter. Now, this also ends up with problems with your an increased likelihood of mistakes, and I can personally vouch for this, which is that when you have manual processes, and a lot of the times we find that this is essentially an email or somebody's dropping off a list of vulnerabilities on somebody's desk, that to me is a situation that is rife for the potential for a mistake to be made. I just hate any sort of manual process. And a lot of these tools don't really have a clean way to link, again, the identification of the vulnerability to the actual fixing of that vulnerability. How do you actually remediate that and have that not be something that is an active threat in your environment? And again, I mentioned earlier that speed is absolutely key here. You can see why. So 76% of organizations report a vulnerability has impacted their business. That's not a positive impact. I'm sure it was a negative impact. But then look at the length of time it takes for organizations to actually start remediating these vulnerabilities. So 32 days to remediate, that ends up being 55 days, almost 2 full months after a fix has become available. Really feels like that process should be significantly streamlined. It should be a lot faster. And I think you'll see inside of NinjaOne that we are taking the initial first steps to try and make this as easy as possible in recognition of the fact that patching and then vulnerability identification are becoming more and more tied together in the modern workplace. And here is why tracking vulnerabilities is important. Uh, this is all a bunch of statistics that essentially illustrate the fact that patching is very difficult, that many companies start falling behind in their patching, that means that exploits are then present and active for a longer period of time. Uh, and that is not ideal in a situation where we have vulnerabilities increasing year over year, and it doesn't seem very likely that that is going to stop or slow down in any significant way. I don't have any data for 2024 quite yet, but I know that in 2023 there was, I think, an over 60% increase year over year in the identified and detected vulnerabilities. Again, I do not expect that to be something that starts reducing. We are living in an era where there are more endpoints than ever, there are more malicious attackers than ever. I don't think that exploits and vulnerabilities are suddenly going to start dropping. This is only going to become, I think, a bigger and bigger part of daily IT life. Now let's talk a little bit about what role NinjaOne actually plays in remediating vulnerabilities. So I mentioned one aspect of it is patching. Uh, Many of the exploits and vulnerabilities are remediated by the actual implementation of either an operating system patch or by patching third-party applications on the device. Those are two things that NinjaOne does very, very well. And so what we have developed here is we've identified the exploits and CVEs that are remediated by a patch. We've had that feature for a little while. What we've done is we've closed the loop now and given you the ability to view the vulnerabilities through the perspective of the vulnerabilities rather than the patches that are remediating those vulnerabilities. So you can think of looking at this in two different ways. One way being I have patches that are available for my devices. These patches need to be installed. But then you also will see the perspective of identifying that you have vulnerabilities on your devices and seeing the CVEs, the specific CVEs that are present on those devices because you lack certain patches. So it gives you the opportunity to view from both perspectives, one perspective being of an IT endpoint manager who wants to ensure that patches are getting installed on a regular cadence, and then the other perspective being from somebody who's more security focused and doesn't necessarily care about the patches that have been applied. They want to see what active CVEs are present on the device. Now, again, NinjaOne is not doing any native identification of vulnerabilities. The only CVEs that we will natively show inside of the product, that is going to occur based off of when we detect that there are missing operating system patches on the device. However, you do have the ability to integrate a third-party vulnerability scanner that might do a more in-depth scan of the device. We are extremely agnostic on this. Oh, I see it in the chat here. Yes, this is being recorded. So if you do have to drop, you will receive an email sometime tomorrow with a link to the recording. Uh, But going back to what I was saying, we have tried to make this as agnostic as possible. We do not support a specific list of providers on the vulnerability scanning side. We really allow you to integrate any tool that gives you identifying information on the device, like the IP address of the device or the MAC address of the device, and then the CVEs that are actually present on the machine. So anything that can export that in some form or fashion through an API or a CSV export, you can then show that data inside of NinjaOne. Uh, this includes API endpoints, so it is possible for you to automate the export of vulnerability information from a third-party tool And again, this could be Rapid7, this could be Connect Secure, this could be CrowdStrike Spotlight, this could be Sentinel-1, this could be Windows Defender, Qualys, Tenable. Uh, it is extremely agnostic on which provider you want to use, but you can then use the API to export from that tool and then automatically import into NinjaOne so that you have a consistent, up-to-date view of what vulnerabilities are present on your devices. And one thing you'll see here is that NinjaOne also gives you the ability to detect the CVSS score of a patch. So essentially how important and critical from a security perspective is a particular patch. And then you can create alerts off of that. So we might raise an alert whenever we have a patch that has a 9.0 or higher CVSS score that is impacting our devices. We might want to create a ticket from that. We might even want to automatically execute patching in order to ensure that devices, if they have the patch available, are installing that as quickly as possible without even the need for a technician to manually intervene. And with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into the demonstration portion now. Again, as I'm going through everything, if you have any questions, please feel free to put that in the Q&A section of Zoom. I see that I already have one question here, which uh, is a RoboShadow integration possible? I will be very honest with you, Anthony. I am not familiar with RoboShadow, but assuming that it is able to export a list of devices, what vulnerabilities are present on those devices, and then the IP address or some other identifying piece of information about the device, that should absolutely be possible. I will go through that in just a moment here if you will bear with me. So right here, we're looking at the main NinjaOne dashboard. And so right here, we can see that we have some health issues as the result of vulnerabilities that have been detected. And so right here, we can see high vulnerabilities, medium vulnerabilities. We go down here, if there were any low vulnerabilities, we would see those as well. Now, this information comes from two different sources. Uh, One source is an external scanner. I'm using a Rapid7 installation to actually scan the device, and then I'm taking those results and I am uploading them through the API into NinjaOne so that I can have a comprehensive view right here. However, I also have NinjaOne identifying what vulnerabilities are present as the result of missing patches. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to actually turn that on. This came out in the 8.0 release of Ninja. If we go to the administration section over here on the left-hand side, and then into the apps section, you'll see right here, we have NinjaOne patching. And so if I click into the NinjaOne patching tile, you'll see that there is a vulnerability health tab right here. And so this in your environment, if you have not already turned this on, this is likely disabled right now. And so what this does is this will take the patches that are missing from your devices. And when we know the CVE information about those patches, essentially what exploits are remediated by that patch, we'll be able to go ahead and also tie those vulnerabilities to that device. And that goes back to what I mentioned earlier. You can look at this from the perspective of what patches are missing on the device, but also from the perspective of what vulnerabilities are present on the device. So just two different perspectives, two different personas in an organization and what they might care about. But we want to make sure that you have that sort of visibility. Now, one other thing that I would mention here is that I would also turn on the vulnerability importer. And so you can see right here the vulnerability importer. I would go ahead and turn that on even if you're not going to import any vulnerabilities from a third-party source. And the reason for that being is that if you do not turn that vulnerability importer on, you do not get the vulnerabilities tab right here, which gives you the ability to go and see the vulnerabilities that are present on all of your devices. And so right here, I could search for specific CVEs. I could also look based off of severity if I only cared to see the most critical and high level vulnerabilities. One thing that's really interesting is that you can actually click on the CVE right here to get information and then even go to the reference here on Microsoft's site if you wanted to look at it a little bit more closely. Now we can also see here, this is a CVE that is present because we are missing a particular patch. We can see right here the remediation for this particular patch is this particular KB. And we can also see where this KB stands in terms of its approval status inside of NinjaOne. So right here, we can see this patch, it hasn't even been approved yet. It's in a pending state, meaning a technician has to go and actually look at it and approve it before it actually gets pushed. And the nice thing is we can go ahead and click right here, and this will show us the patch in question. We can see 6 devices are actually requesting this patch right now. I can even click on that, and it will show me the list of 6 devices in question that need this particular patch. So let's go into our patching section here. We can go and see those 6 patches. We can see this patch here. You can actually read up on the patch notes right here by clicking on this hyperlink. But one thing I'm a big fan of is a new feature that Ninja launched, I believe, in the 7.0 release, which is Patch Intelligence AI. This is NinjaOne's first AI feature. And what it does is it scrapes publicly available information from the internet to judge the sentiment of patches. Essentially, are patches judged to be causing issues and problems for practitioners, or are they, all good? There's no real issues here. And so you can see right here, we have this KB analysis column. To get to this point, just go to the administration section that we were in earlier, and then to apps. And then you can see right here, NinjaOne AI. Just need to go ahead and turn that on and make sure that Patch Intelligence AI is enabled right there. And so if we go back into our patch approvals, you can see right here that we can see when devices have known issues or when the patch appears to be stable. And so this patch right here, a cumulative update, this appears to be just fine. And we can see here the overview of this patch. If there are any known issues reported by Microsoft, fortunately, there are not for this particular one. And overall, the general sentiment right here is positive. We can see that there are not many people who are reporting that they are experiencing issues with this patch. However, if we back out, we can see that this cumulative update, this does appear to be causing problems. And so here we can see that this has some known issues with the Citrix session recording agent. We can see that some Intel vPro processors might be having some BitLocker issues. We can see some devices may have additional BitLocker issues with the recovery key, and then we can see some LSAS issues right here. And so if you leverage these heavily, BitLocker, Intel vPro, you may want to hold off on the implementation of this patch. And so this is just really something that I think helps put some guardrails up, gives you some insight that you otherwise might not have had. We talked about the importance of patching and making sure that vulnerabilities are taken care of, but obviously that needs to go hand in hand with the potential for a patch to cause additional issues. I know we all know that we would hope that no bad patches ever get released and every patch is perfect, but we all know in the real world that that doesn't happen and that sometimes patches end up being way worse than any vulnerability that they might remediate. And so this attempts to give you the insight, give you the guidance to ensure that you're not being impacted by those situations. One thing that is really cool in our next release, our 9.0 release, which should start rolling out in a few weeks here in June. Excuse me. That should give you the ability to manage your approvals entirely using this feature. And so what you can do is automatically approve patches, but then as you go through the patch lifecycle, devices or Patch Intelligence AI will say, hey, you've automatically approved this patch, but we hear that this is causing some problems. We can actually undo that approval for you so that you can review and decide if you want to push it or not. So I'm really excited for that feature in the 9.0 release. Now, one other thing that we can see here is that we have the CVE information. This is something that we've had for a few releases now. We have the actual CVEs. You can click on these, and this will take you to the NIST website if you want to read up more about the actual CVE itself. And you can also see the CVSS score and the overall severity of this particular exploit. And then one nice feature here is that if you do need to get this out of Ninja and into somebody else's hands for whatever reason, I do like the copy to clipboard functionality there. Makes it really easy to paste into a CSV and then get it out to somebody else. Got a question from Cristiano. We're going to take a little break here. He is using CrowdStrike as an EDR integrated into NinjaOne via API. And CrowdStrike API could also send vulnerabilities from the Falcon sensor to NinjaOne, but the integration currently isn't able to accomplish this. Will the integration between CrowdStrike and NinjaOne be available in the future? I will say that I personally do not know if we have an integration underway on that front. What I will say, Cristiano, is that I can talk a little bit right now about how you have the potential to build your own integration. So let's go ahead and close out here and talk about what I mean by that. And so this would be accomplished by using the API to retrieve information from CrowdStrike and uploading it to NinjaOne. And I know that Cristiano's desire here, and probably the desire of any CrowdStrike user, is for that to just be a native integration without any additional setup. And so that certainly would be a feature request and something that we would look into. But if you did want to accomplish this today, in the near term, you do have the possibility for that to be something that you could put into your workflows. And so let's go to the administration icon over there on the left-hand side. And then we'll go to apps and then API. And so in here at the very bottom, you can see the documentation version 2.0 new right there. And if I hover over this and over on the right-hand side, I will see the view option. And if I click on the view option, this is where we can see all of our API documentation. If we go down here near the bottom, you're going to see the new vulnerability management endpoints. Assuming I did not skip over them. There we go. And so right here, we can fetch our scan groups, and then we can upload a CSV. And so this gives you information on how to do all this. We actually give you a script in our documentation that explains or actually performs the action of uploading a CSV to NinjaOne. And so if you are interested in that, we can go to the question mark in the top right of your NinjaOne instance, and then into Dojo. And then if we search for automating vulnerability import right here, I will drop this link into the chat like so. And this article goes over the process of what it means or how to do the automated import from your or into NinjaOne by uploading a CSV. Again, the individual vendor that you're using, if it's CrowdStrike, if it is Rapid7, you would need to come up with your own script to retrieve that information. Or you could perhaps have something automatically exported out through those systems, depending on if they support that. But the retrieval of information from whatever third-party tool you're using, I don't have anything for that. That would need to be on a vendor per vendor basis. But this right here will give you the ability to upload a CSV into NinjaOne. You can see at the very bottom here, there's a vulnerability importer sample script. Just click on that and you can see the code right here. I'll drop this into the chat as well. Now, one I have seen is right here. This is from our community, and it was a script to retrieve from Sentinel-1 and then upload those vulnerabilities into NinjaOne. I have not personally tested this, but I have seen some positive reviews of it. So I will go ahead and put this one into the chat as well, in case it gives anybody any inspiration on how you can do this with other vendors. Sorry, Cristiano, I know you're using CrowdStrike. I just don't have anything for that one in particular right now. But I did want to talk a little bit about how you could then orchestrate this process through NinjaOne. So let's go in here into this environment. And let's go into my API server here. So an API server is just the name for a framework where you can use this to make API calls securely through NinjaOne. Obviously, you would never want to expose API credentials on a general endpoint. And so the point of this is to have a secure VM or a secure physical machine behind a locked door that nobody will have access to unless they are a NinjaOne system administrator. If you're looking for instructions on how to set this up, Luke Whitelock is a product manager here at NinjaOne, and he did a great write-up of how to get started with this workflow. Essentially, you create a unique organization and a unique device role for this device, and you use NinjaOne's user permissions to deny access to this device if they are not a system administrator in NinjaOne. And so this allows you to make API calls in a secure manner, again, without exposing those credentials in a potentially dangerous scenario. If you are looking for a video on how to set this up, right here, I do have a video on how to set up the API server on YouTube. That is also in the chat right now. And so what we've done here is I've created a unique policy as well for this API server, and I've got a scheduled automation right here where this is going to go ahead and import vulnerabilities. So right here, it's running a script to retrieve vulnerabilities from a third-party source and then automatically upload those into NinjaOne. And you can see this is just being done on a daily basis. You can change the scheduling, whatever cadence you would prefer. You can absolutely make that happen. Obviously, you would just want to align this with whatever your schedule is inside of your third-party scanner tool. You would want to ensure that you're aligning with that schedule, so that way you're uploading vulnerabilities, somewhat in relation to after the scan is completed. It wouldn't make any sense to do daily uploads if you're only scanning once per week. So just keep that in mind. Francis has a question. Does NinjaOne integrate with Fortinet EMS client? I am not aware that we do. We don't have anything on our website about that. I will say that sometimes other vendors do build integrations with us that we don't necessarily know about. But no, I'm not aware of us having an integration with Fortinet EMS today. Apologies for that, Francis. And so I am using that style of workflow to automatically update NinjaOne with the status of vulnerabilities from my scanner. So that way I don't have to do it manually. You can do it manually. And in fact, you will have to do it manually when you set it up for the very, very first time. And so what that looks like, actually, I'm in the wrong environment. What that looks like, if we go to apps over here on the left-hand side, and then we go down to the vulnerability importer, you can see right here, I have my vulnerability import that I've done. This was from Rapid7. And what I've done here is created a scan group. I could call this Rapid7.2 right there. We'll say that this is also from Rapid7. Again, I would say that although we've got these predefined selections from this drop-down menu, other down here is a perfectly valid selection. So this is extremely agnostic. I know I've said that word probably 6 times so far this webinar, but we really do not care who the vendor is. Our desire is for this to work with anything that can export the minimal amount of data that we require. Just for demonstration purposes, we'll go ahead and bypass that warning. And so when I say identifying information, what do I mean by that? Well, first and foremost, we need to know how we identify the device. And so here, this could be the host name, it could be the MAC address, it could be the IP address. In this particular export that I have from Rapid7, it's based off of the IP address. And so right here, I'll say I need the IP address in the CSV to then match to the private IP address inside of Ninja. And that is our pivot right there that we are going to operate off of. And then we need the column that actually has the CVE ID. It needs to be in that specific format, CVE-date, and then there's the unique number at the very end. So in my case, I think I actually have it twice, vulnerability ID and vulnerability CVE IDs. I know this one works, so I can go ahead and import that right now. And clearly I have a duplicate here. I could probably go ahead and just delete this group right there. But that is how I would do the initial process of importing vulnerabilities into Ninja with the CSV. And then at this point, I can use the API that I showed earlier to fetch the scan groups right here. And I need that scan group so that I can then effectively upload my CSV right here. So just a little bit of information on that process of how you would interact with the API to then automate the upload of that CSV into Ninja on a regular basis. So everything's always up to date. Now let's look here, that information bubble to go away. Let's look here at the vulnerability that is actually being processed by this particular file. I can go in here. Used to be. All right, so I can go back to my main vulnerabilities page right here. I'm going to look for that particular CVE right here. And this is the Windows Search remote code execution vulnerability. Pretty bad one, would let somebody execute potentially malicious code through Windows Search. So this is an example of something that isn't patched yet. So there is not a Windows update patch or a software patch that is going to fix this particular issue. In this particular case, I need to actually make a registry modification on the device. And so using NinjaOne, I can then go ahead and import that script, create that script to create that registry modification, and then use NinjaOne to push that out at scale across dozens of devices, tens of devices, hundreds of devices. In my case, it's going to be just one. But in theory, you are addressing this vulnerability across essentially your entire impacted fleet. Now, if I click on this right here, I can see in this case, it's this one particular device. So I'll just click into this device right here. And you can see that I've got a bunch of vulnerabilities here. There's the vulnerabilities tab. And you can see here that the source of these vulnerabilities does change. Most of these exploits are detected by NinjaOne patching. And so based off of the patches that are not installed on this device, that lets us know that these CVEs are present and unaccounted for. But then we also have this third-party scanner right here that has imported these vulnerabilities so that we have additional insight. So you get multiple sources here. And in fact, you saw that with the ability to create multiple scan groups, that you have the capability of importing multiple tools. So if you are using many different tools, there's absolutely no issue with importing results from all of those tools into your system. I think this is especially beneficial for managed service providers who obviously may have many clients, and thus they might receive many different exports from many different tools. The ability to import all those various results into NinjaOne is, I think, invaluable. Uh, with that, again, using this word again, the agnostic nature of how we import vulnerabilities into NinjaOne. So right here, this is again the device view. I can see all those vulnerabilities that are present here. Uh, Now, this gives you the ability from this menu here. We're on the devices menu. And so I'm able to identify where this specific exploit is present across my entire fleet. Now, I've deliberately only put it in place on this one device right here. But in theory, again, we're seeing our entire fleet. So this would be probably every impacted Windows workstation. So this could be, again, thousands of devices. Now, what I can do from here is actually take action. So I can select a box right here. Uh, I can select all my devices, and then I would have the option to go ahead and run some sort of action. And this could be running a software update. This could be running an operating system patch update. Uh, in my particular case, again, because this is a registry modification, I'm going to go ahead and just run a script. Now, here's the thing. Where do I get that script? So I'm going to go into the administration section here and then into library. And let's say you have absolutely no idea of how to modify a registry key using PowerShell. If we go into the automation library right here and then into the template library tab, you will see that we have a script that is designed to remediate a specific CVE right here. And this is an example of how you can remediate something via the registry. So if you have no idea how to do this, this is a template right here that you can use to go ahead and make the exact change that you need. You could copy and paste this into ChatGPT if you wanted and didn't feel like doing any PowerShell coding, just to make a modification to your particular need. And so what I've done is I've actually imported that script into my automation library, except I have modified it to address the other CVE that I have present. And so if I go back into my devices menu right here, again, I still have this device selected. I can select that device, go to run. I'll run a script. And then here I have the remediation script that I imported and modified, and I can go ahead and export or run this right now. There is also an option here to undo the registry fix if for whatever reason you had a need to do that. I don't in this case, so we can go ahead and just run it across this device. And if I click the toggle activities button in the top right, I'm able to see over here, this has already executed and completed. It looks like we are good to go. And then all I would need to do is go and run my vulnerability or wait for my vulnerability scan to run again, recognize that this registry modification has been made and that the vulnerability is no longer present. And then once that gets re-imported into NinjaOne, that would then update on the dashboard. You would see that exploit disappear. And the same thing applies as we start to patch. So for example, if we go in and look at any devices that have approved patches, hmm, we go and look at any devices that have any approved patches right here. Oh, nothing's approved. That's one. So we can go ahead and find a device right here. Let's go ahead and look at Carolyn's workstation. And we'll go ahead and approve this patch for her particular device. We can go ahead and approve this malicious software patch as well. And then from there, I have the option to go ahead and run a manual application of patches. Now let's back up and look at this from, again, a slightly different perspective. Let's go into the policy for this device. And so right here, this is the policy. For anybody who is not familiar with NinjaOne, the policy is the engine of Ninja. It's what makes the whole system go. And you can see right here why I say that. The conditions and compound conditions, this is what allows you to alert and create tickets whenever a device needs attention. And the device might need attention because the antivirus health is not good. The AV could be missing or outdated. It could also be because a particular service is down. In this case, the print spooler is down, would be great to run a script to start the service back up, and then we'll recognize that this has been done and reset the alert. We could also close the corresponding ticket that gets created as well. And we can also do this with patching. So if we come down here, we can see that we have our patching conditions to alert whenever a patch with a CVSS score of more than 9.0 is available. And this is when it's been available for 3 days or longer. I would also note here the include rejected patches option. I am a big fan of this. I am somebody who sometimes misclicks because I click maybe too quickly. And if I accidentally reject something that is actually important, this is a nice safeguard to receive a ticket that alerts you just in case that patch has been rejected and isn't being deployed out to your devices as you would hope and expect. Now, again, it would be great potentially to have an automated action run in response to whenever we have this patch available. And so what we're going to do here is type in OS patch apply, and you can see that we have the option to initiate an OS patch scan or an application of patches. And so what I can do here is whenever a CVSS patch is available, I can automatically run a patch apply cycle. Now, again, the patch might be available but not yet approved, so it may not install, but this at least helps you get the ball rolling in case speed is just the absolute most critical thing for you, and you never want to have a situation where patches are not getting installed. You can see another patching related one right here. Device has not installed an operating system patch in 30 days or more. I'm a big fan of that one. Now, if we go into Windows patches here, this is where we control the actual patching settings. When are we looking for new patches? When are we going to be actually downloading and installing the patches? That'll be on the update schedule. The scan schedule, that's strictly going to be identifying when you have new patches available. And of course, this would be what updates the vulnerability health that we saw earlier. By detecting those missing patches, that is how NinjaOne's native vulnerability health feature is going to work. Obviously, if you're importing from a third-party scanner, this would have no direct impact in Ninja, but scanning and updating on the device could then be something that you would want to scan after the fact so that you can then upload into Ninja and have those updated results. So Lee has a question from a customer success or sales perspective. How do you position the return on investment of vulnerability remediation through NinjaOne when speaking with security conscious but resource constrained IT teams? That is a very good question. And I think that we are ideally positioned to accomplish that. As I mentioned earlier, and let me go into a different uh, tab here. As I mentioned earlier, this is often handled by two different teams and organizations, at least in my experience when I've spoken to people. You have the security team, but then also the IT team, and there's not always a good bridge between them. And so I think there's actually two good NinjaOne features here that are very useful for bridging the gap on those communication breakdowns, while also providing features and functionality that are useful to both teams. Uh, excuse me. So here with the vulnerability feature, IT teams are now getting additional insight that they might not have otherwise had from inside of their system. So before we had this feature, you can look at this as a security team member could drop something on an IT member's desk and say, "Here's a list of vulnerabilities that you need to exploit," and you essentially have to start from a blank piece of paper. With this system here, we're trying to put in place a system where the security team can easily have an automated export from a vulnerability scanning tool into the endpoint management tool, and it becomes a fully automated process there. In terms of the return on investment there, I don't think I really have any hard numbers on what that would be. Oh, I apologize. It appears that my camera has died. So I will not be visible for the next few minutes. Uh, but yeah, in terms of the return on investment there, I think that it's clear that there's a workflow improvement there. You have something that is quickly able to take results from a vulnerability scanning tool and get them into the space where they're actually remediated. In my PowerPoint earlier, and I'll actually jump back to that, we talked a lot about how it takes teams a really, really long time to actually get these vulnerabilities patched. In some cases, it's taking 2 months. In some cases, it's taking a lot longer for them to actually patch these vulnerabilities. The goal of what we're doing here is to significantly decrease that time. Ideally, our path forward with vulnerability remediation is to take or to create an automated process where you're able to take results from a vulnerability scanning tool, see them in NinjaOne, and seamlessly then patch them on either the operating system side or the third party application side, while also being able to push these registry based modifications that we mentioned just now. So, Lee, hopefully that answers your question there. But I think that there's a huge benefit there in improving the existing workflow, which in my experience is not great. We have a question. Is this also necessary and suitable for computers that run in kiosk mode, such as in museums? I would say, from my perspective, any endpoint that people are going to be touching is something that you would want to track from a vulnerability perspective. Assuming that a device running in kiosk mode still needs to be patched, uh, yes, I would absolutely say that patching and tracking vulnerability status on those devices is still key. And obviously, there are other situations that sometimes come into place with those types of devices. I call them communal devices that many people touch. For example, some people use deep freeze to lock down the configuration of the device, but of course, the device would then still need to be patched on a regular basis to ensure that you're protected and your devices are secured against these hostile exploits. James says, I've gone full ninja and is now hidden. Yes, we'll go with that. That makes me sound much cooler than somebody who forgot to charge his battery. Now, one thing we really haven't talked about so far today is third-party software patching. So let's go and talk a little bit about that in the time that we have left. Again, if you have questions, I hope you can tell that I am more than happy to answer those. So please feel free to get those into the Q&A section before the end of the webinar. Now, let's go into our patching tab here, and we can see our software patches. So earlier we saw the operating system patches right here. We can see what's pending, what's failed, what's approved, and we get the exact same workflow here. What patches are pending approval and need to be approved before they will actually be installed. But then we can also see what's already been approved and then what's been rejected in case we need to undo a rejection and bring a patch back to life. Now, third-party software patching is something that you're going to see across Windows and Mac devices. So if we go into a Mac OS workstation here, you'll see that we have the policy setup for Mac OS is very, very similar to how the policy setup is for Windows. The one additional tab here is that you do have the MDM tab down here at the very bottom. And the MDM tab is going to be how you deploy all your MDM features and configurations. For example, restrictions on device functionality. This is how Apple prefers that you patch macOS devices, policy preferences, system extensions, custom payloads. This would all be patched through NinjaOne MDM. So let's go back into a Windows policy here. You'll see that we have a software tab over on the left-hand side. Right here, the software tab is where we can select what applications we would like to patch on this for devices that are on this policy. We can see here that this is enabled, and the workflow here is very, very similar to what we see with Windows patching. You can see here we have our software tab. This is where we list the specific software, and there are two different repositories for this. One is a NinjaOne repository, and this is a repository that would cross across both Windows and Mac OS devices. However, there is also a winget repository, and this is something that you're only going to be able to take advantage of on Windows workstations. And then I believe Windows Server 2025 also supports winget. So those are going to be the only two sources that you're going to be able to take advantage of. The nice thing is that the winget repository contains over 6,600 applications. So that is a very robust repository, has a lot of different applications in there that can help you make sure that you've got your bases covered when it comes to patching all of your software. Oh, Georgie points out that this is server 22 as well. Thank you very much, Georgie. Appreciate that. And so we can select these here, and then you'll have the ability to go ahead and run patching on a recurring basis to ensure that not just your operating system is patched and up to date, but all your third-party software applications are as well. Francis has a question. In the vulnerabilities tab, will I see all vulnerabilities for that devices, or is it just a general list of vulnerabilities? When I patch, will it be removed from this list or table? So it depends on what the source is. So right here, anything with a source of NinjaOne patching, as you patch those devices and they are remediated, yes, they will automatically be removed from this section. However, if you are importing from a third party, like Rapid7 right here, that is only going to be removed after you perform a scan in your third-party tool, and then you import the results from your third-party tool into Ninja. This is why the automation section that I mentioned earlier is very valuable and preferred. So you don't have to do those manual exports. But yes, that is something to be aware of there. NinjaOne patching, yes, after we install the patch, it will automatically be removed. But if you're using a third-party source, the vulnerability would only be removed after you remediate and then run a scan in your third-party tool, and we re-upload those results into NinjaOne. So right here, we can obviously see all of these vulnerabilities that are present here. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is the potential to create search groups to help you identify and remediate vulnerabilities, or at least keep devices patched and up to date on a more consistent basis. So, one thing that I really like here is not having an OS patch scan in a certain length of time. And so let's say right here, we go 15 days without getting a OS patch scan. So fortunately, I don't have any devices that haven't had that scan, but I'm going to go ahead and save this and say no scan in 15 days. Now, what I can do is then go and create a task to automate across that group. And so in the administration menu, I can go to tasks, call this OS patch scan, and we're going to run this let's say every 4 hours. Now, again, right now there's nothing inside that search group, so this is not going to run across any devices. But the goal is that as devices automatically fall out of compliance, which would mean that they have gone more than 15 days without an OS patch scan, we would then go ahead and run that OS patch scan. And you can see here that we have these automations for both Windows, Mac, and Linux. We're using MDM to patch, so I'm for Mac OS, so I won't add that one in here. And then what I will key on next is my targets. We're going to add in a target, and I have three different options. It could be an organization or list of organizations. It could be a device or a list of devices. But both of these options here are static, and I would have to come in here and manually manage all of my selections. My preference is to use a group. And this is NinjaOne doing the heavy lifting of identifying when you need to run a certain automation. It's all based off of the search parameters that you build into your search groups. And this is something that could be applied to anything in NinjaOne. We could automatically run the script to remediate the Windows search remote code exploit automatically across any device that is detected to have it. And so this lets you put a set and forget automation in place, something that automatically tracks and takes cares of known vulnerabilities or keeps devices in compliance by having them scanned for patches without the need for too much heavy lifting on the part of the technician. I see we have a couple of questions. Josh has a question. I am following along whilst watching, and I cannot see how I can get a CSV to import from Connect Secure, which includes either the hostname or the IP for assets. The documentation doesn't specify the type of report or how to trigger it on either Ninja or Connect Secure's side. Unfortunately, Josh, I am not incredibly familiar with Connect Secure. I will show you here. This is essentially what I am using. This is the format from Rapid7, I believe. And so here I have some sort of asset IP address or MAC address. Here I have the vulnerability ID in this specific format. And I think that's really all you're going to need there. Everything else should be pulled from the NVD database. I apologize that I'm just not familiar with Connect Secure to tell you how to get that report. I would tell you, or recommend, I should say, that if you investigate their API, that may be an easier way just to go and pull down a JSON file that you could then easily convert into a CSV. I would also recommend the NinjaOne Discord if you are not already a member. I will post a link into the chat. And that is a great community there. There certainly are some cyber CNS users in there, and they may have some insight there that I just do not. So I'll pop that link into the chat if you do care to join our Discord. Austin uses both a third-party vulnerability scanner and NinjaOne vulnerability. Will NinjaOne show the same vulnerability from both sources? We should show that that comes from multiple sources, is my understanding. So if we actually, I'm in the wrong environment again. Go into the vulnerabilities tab here. I believe we should show multiple sources in this column here. So you would see NinjaOne patching and then Rapid7 or Defender, or Connect Secure, or whatever your scanner of choice is. Uh, Costa asks, apologies, I cannot see vulnerabilities tab on my NinjaOne dashboard. As a reminder, how to set that up, Go into the gear on the left-hand side, also called the administration section. And then you can go into apps and then go down and import or you can add app and you'll see the vulnerability importer. It is this one right here. You want to go ahead and enable that. You do not need to create a scan group, but to see the vulnerabilities tab today, you do need to turn this on. I think we fixed this in 9.0 where the vulnerabilities tab will be present if you're using the vulnerability health feature. But for now, you need to turn on both of them. So you need to have the vulnerability importer turned on, and then also turn on NinjaOne patching and the vulnerability health. NinjaOne patching is already on, but you just need to turn on the vulnerability health tab. Is what is demonstrated available as standard in NinjaOne or is an additional paid module? Nope, this is all included with NinjaOne. If you are using the NinjaOne agent, this is included. Peter says, how did you set up the no scan search in NinjaOne? So all I did is go into devices and then into more filters. And if you type in OS and go scroll down to the bottom, so no OS patch scan, I'll actually like that. We can then go ahead and click on that and then say, hey, it's been more than 15 days without a patch scan, which I think I have 70,000 devices in this division. I think I do have some that have no scan. I can then go ahead and save that like so. And then I can go down to the administration section, tasks, and then create. Well, it looks like I already did it. Run patch scan every 15 days. Run this right here, and then select your target as the search group that we created. I know we're at time. Thank you, everyone who joined me here today. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. Jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. This will be emailed out to you. You will receive a link to the recording. Appreciate your time, and please, everyone, have an excellent rest of your day. Take care.